Hello and welcome to Remote, the Connected Faculty Summit, day 2 of our conference. My name is Allison Forbes and I'll be your moderator today. Before we get started, there are a few things to note. On the left side of your screen, you'll see a panel with a few key tabs. The first is the chat tab, allows you to interact with your fellow attendees. I see some of you have already come in and introduced yourselves. In that same chat box, there's a questions tab, which enables you to submit your questions for the speakers to answer at the end of their presentation. Finally, there's a slides and related resources tab. You can find all of those things in the handouts tab. If needed, you can resize and rearrange the panels on your screen just like you would a browser window. Click the icons on the bottom of your screen to open or close the additional panels such as speaker bios, abstracts, share, and often handouts, as I mentioned. Should you have technical issues, please first refresh your browser. If your issue is not resolved, please submit a note in the questions tab for assistance, and our engineers will help you out the best way that they can. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be available to watch on demand after the event. Now on to the good stuff. Let's talk about the presentation, Online and Blended Design for Introduction to Psychology. Discussing today's topic is Emily Thomas, a lecturer at Northern Arizona University, and Don Carter, the Director of Academic and Research Technology Services and Adaptive Program Manager for Northern Arizona University. Now let's get started. Over to you, Don and Emily.
So it's good to be here with all of you. And you can see on the title, we're talking about modernizing a course, Psych 101, in this time period of the COVID coronavirus event. But I wanted to give you a little background about our general program. We've had about 20 courses that we've been working on over the last couple of years, 3 years, to make them active and adaptive learning models for the way courses are delivered. And Psych 101 is one of the courses. We've had kind of a range of courses, some that just adopted a kind of out-of-the-box courseware, and then we've had others where we completely developed a whole new course using a system, not a general regular publisher system, but an adaptive delivery. And then we have something in the middle. That's where most of our courses lie, and that's where Psych 101 is in this range of different approaches to courses. So I'm going to let Emily talk a little bit about Psych 101, and then I'll come back and talk some more about some of the attributes and aspects of these things.
Yeah. So when we first, the journey of Psych 101 over the last, I would say 10 years, but really the last 3 has been quite an adventure. As many of you who teach classes know, you're never finished prepping a course. You're always changing stuff. So when we first got on board with the most recent active and adaptive sort of program, we really took a long, hard look at what we were hoping to accomplish. And with the guidance of our instructional designers and Don, we really wanted to focus first on what the pedagogical purpose of these coursewares were. And so what we hope to accomplish, and then once we figured out what we hope to accomplish, we could then try to find tools that would help us accomplish those goals. So before you embark on any sort of mission to implement courseware, I would suggest taking, I know luxury of time is not on our side anymore, but take a little bit of time to establish the problems that you're having, what issues you hope to solve, and what do you hope to improve. There's a myriad of technological solutions for things, but it's better to figure out what you want and then for your students, and then search for a technology that fits that rather than establishing the technology first and trying to form it to your goals. So for Psych 101 specifically, we were very interested in having students be more engaged with the materials before class. That's the age-old problem of getting students to read. We wanted that. We also wanted customizable materials. There's nothing worse, in my opinion, than standing up in front of a class, and Psych 101 is a class of 400 students, and saying something, having a student raise their hand and say, the book said the exact opposite. That to me is seriously troublesome. So we always were interested in customizability of our materials. So once you've started establishing your priorities, some things that you want to accomplish, then it's possible to start evaluating the products. So there's lots of vendors, there's lots of products. When you start thinking about implementing online courseware, the most important thing to me is to collaborate with your institution's instructional design team, your e-learning center, whatever you may have, so that you are not reinventing the wheel. And Don, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So we've had a context here at Northern Arizona University that's, I think, been very helpful for the event that happened in March when we all went to remote teaching. We've had this program for 3 or 4 years, and many courses, mostly high enrollment, introductory liberal education or general education courses. We've had an e-learning center that has instructional designers, graphic designers, a help desk and training, so that faculty have known about the e-learning center and worked with them. We've also had the technology set up. We've been using Blackboard Learn for many years. We've had a shell for every course automatically created and populated with enrollments. We've got Kaltura for streaming. We've got Blackboard Collaborate for webinar type of activities. So we've had this structure in place. And then one other thing that we've had that I think has made a huge difference is we have what we call the First Year Learning Initiative, which is a faculty-driven and faculty-initiated program, so that we would have coordination across all sections of a course. So Psych 101, they may have 2 or 3 sections, but the faculty teaching those sections work together, have the same learning goals, most of the same kinds of activities and approaches. That's not a done deal. But then the other thing that they get by being in this program is they get some teaching assistants that help with the process of delivering the course. So when we went remote in March, we had a lot of pieces already in place. And so assembling them or coordinating them was not as difficult as creating them from whole cloth as some institutions have had to do. So Emily, you might talk about what happened in March when we suddenly went remote. And I think I would put right here kind of a pin in there for people to think about. We were not really going to online teaching. We were thinking of it as remote teaching. So we never really thought of this as, high quality, fully online, asynchronous courses. It was remote teaching in a pinch. And how do we do that?
Yeah. So thank you for bringing up those points there, or all 3 of them, really good. So we were well prepared in March, and that's because over the course of the last 1.5 to 2 years, we've been really refining our online course materials, even though we were teaching a traditional in-person class. And so having all those things in place was very much helpful, and I would encourage people to utilize as many online resources as possible given the current state of affairs. So Psych 101 has gone through several iterations with different vendors over the last several years. And I think it's important that we talk a little bit about the different types of vendors that exist. And Don, you already mentioned that, some of the courses at NEU went ahead and adopted courseware that was really plug and play, out of the box, fully publisher-driven resources that were really easy to utilize. And Psych 101 has utilized resources like that, especially for our fully online courses. But for our in-person course, we were looking for more flexibility, less, more brevity in our textbook. And so we ended up using an OER, open resource text that we edited, and we were able to put that into McGraw-Hill Connect and really build everything the way that we wanted to do that. Now, it did take a good deal of time, so if you are interested in finding something for fall 2020, I wouldn't suggest creating your own, editing your own textbook and rebuilding everything in any platform. Before we utilized Connect, we actually used a program called Learning Objects and built everything out in that platform. Unfortunately, that platform was purchased by another publishing company, and they were no longer able to support our product. So a word of caution to people, if you are interested in building your own product or building something in a platform where the company may or may not get bought out or has just gotten bought out, be wary of that so that you don't end up repeating a great deal of work as we did. Through the PSY First Year Learning Initiative that Don was speaking about, we do have TA support, which has been exceptionally helpful, and we do have a coordinated course. So that means that I'm not the only one planning and working and creating for Psychology 101, even though I'm the coordinator. I've worked with probably 5 or 6 different faculty over the last 5 years. Currently the Psych 101 team is only 2, but we work very well together, and we collaborate to implement really our best possible course for all of our students, which is about 1,600 students each semester. So these are some things that I think are important when you're evaluating courseware, wanting to know how customizable the product is, what's the process of modification, how can you change things, can you change things at all? What if a question is wrong? What happens? You're going to want to ask all those questions before you implement or adopt programs. And then how easily does it integrate with your LMS, and what's their tech support situation? Because of the number of students that we have in 101, it was really important for us to find a platform that had 24/7 tech support, because I cannot answer 1,000 tech support questions a week. So that was really important. Don, was there anything else that you think should go on this list?
Yeah, when you're thinking about working with a vendor, you really want to look for one that's going to be a partner rather than a sales outlet, because there will be times that you need modifications, and many of these, especially adaptive courseware, but any courseware, is designed around collecting data on student activity and providing some kind of a dashboard for faculty to understand what the student activity has been like, where the sticking points are, and trying to understand that and knowing, does it take 10 clicks to get to a piece of information about a particular topic, or is that easy to see? So that when you have students doing things before class, you might find out, oh, here's this concept that they're having a lot of trouble with, and you want to cover that during the face-to-face class or portion of the class. How hard is it or easy is it to get that information? Because if you don't get that in a timely way, then it's really not a benefit. So those are some of the kinds of things that you really want to kind of look at, not just the customizability, but the usability. Is it easy to use? Does it give you the kind of information you need? And then after class, and I think of these classes as blended in principle, but especially now when we're going into fall 2020, and I think we're all still kind of up in the air about how much remote teaching we're going to have to be doing. And we'll talk a little bit about NAU's perspective on this in a minute. But I think of the ideas, you really want to think of your class first as an online class. And then if you have the luxury of meeting face-to-face, which would be a traditional blended or hybrid type class development, you would have before class, during class, and after class. So you kind of have these 3 things. Are students prepared? Then what kind of active learning do we do? And then what kind of synthesis occurs after class? Now going into fall, NAU is planning to open early. We're planning to use a thing called NAU Flex, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. One of the things that we've got a little bit of the luxury of this summer is most of these courses and the course coordinators are working on teaching guides so that both for themselves kind of reflect on, what they had been doing prior to the COVID event in early March, and then what happened during that event, and now how do we plan for the future. So Emily's getting a little bit of time this summer with a little bit of help from me, not a lot, because I'm trying to help lots of people as well as get the classrooms all in place. But let's let Emily tell you about what her journey is looking like and what she's faced with in the next month or so in preparing for fall 2020.
So when we approached fall 2020, I've been collaborating very closely with my other colleague who's also teaching 101, and we're hoping to obviously maintain our courses in the best way possible to serve our students, right? So the three things that we kind of came up with as guiding principles were access, flexibility, and compassion. Everyone could use a little compassion right now, right? So access, we want our students to be able to access our course materials. We're going to talk more about NAU Flex in a minute, which is the model that NAU has adopted, not really new, but rebranded. And we wanted to make sure that students can access everything, whether that be in person or remotely. We don't know whether our students are going to be quarantined somewhere, whether they're going to get sick, etc. So we are going to rely really heavily on the online resources that we have to make sure that our students are able to access our course content. We will be meeting with half of our students at a time. So half on Tuesday, half on Thursday, and the half that are not in person will be able to attend that class remotely. Like Don said earlier, we are very lucky that we are able to have even a diminishing number of teaching assistant hours. And so we are going to have teaching assistants who are able to help us manage online participation during class. That's going to look pretty rough at first, I imagine, simply having a teaching assistant up on the podium with us or up on the stage with us, asking or being able to field questions from those students who are attending remotely. We're also hoping to create groups in BB Learn through the grouping feature so that students can communicate with each other during class as though they were in class. We'll see how that goes. We are planning to be flexible. As you know, Arizona is currently seeing a very aggressive spike in COVID-19 cases, and so we are just ready to roll with the punches of whatever comes next. And as always, what I find is that honesty is the best policy. When we went remote in March, I was very nervous and concerned about my students, both not getting the experience that they wanted or that I wanted them to have, and also my teaching evals, because everyone's concerned about that. But I was very honest with my students from, the time when I thought that we weren't coming back. And I tried my very best to provide them with the best resources that I could in the given situation. It was pretty remarkable how many of my 400 students emailed me individually just to say, thanks for being honest with either what you knew was going on or what you didn't know was going on, because it really helped me accomplish what I needed to. So that's why I've said honesty is the best policy. We're all shooting in the dark sometimes. You just gotta get everyone on the same page where you can. And I think that'll bring us up to some of the NAU resources that we have for the NAU Flex model. If you wanna share that, Don?
Yeah, let me share those websites so that we can kind of walk through a little bit of this. So it's interesting, Emily saying honesty is the best policy. Well, I agree with that. But when you're thinking and your decisions and requirements, recommendations, whatever, are muddled, it's hard to be honest other than saying, gosh, we don't know. Well, we have a plan. How well that plan is going to play out is still yet to be seen. But we're using this term, NAU Flex. It's our branded version for High Flex. And if you look up High Flex on EDUCAUSE or Inside Higher Ed, This is something that's been around since about 2005. I think San Francisco State and Georgia Technical College used it in 2006 or 7. We actually had a couple of classes using this methodology a few years ago in education. But the idea is that students can attend however they need to. And we were really thinking of this as more of an institution-driven rather than a student-driven choice option. And now it's kind of morphed into a faculty choice. And the idea is that with the social distancing that's going to be required, we're going to spread students out in classrooms. So our current or our previous capacities for classrooms are no longer valid. And so, as Emily was saying, in the classroom that holds, 420 students, and in fact, I think they're being moved to a bigger room that can hold more in general. But in the social distancing model, they're going to meet half the students on Tuesday, half the students on Thursday. So about 200 will be spread out in this room. Now, there's a couple different ways you can, probably more than a couple, but there's several different ways you could approach this. I believe that Emily and most of the other classes that I've been working with are planning to have the students face-to-face in the room, spread out, mostly lecture, but then some active learning projects during class. And then the other students who are not there in the classroom that day will log into the Blackboard Collaborate. And so the class will be being recorded, displayed. I don't know what the right term is, depends on whether it's actually recorded or not. But, and then breakout rooms in Collaborate, and students can do some activities. So the online ones will mostly work with each other. The local ones will work, probably yelling across the table or something. And then there's another approach that a couple of courses are taking where instead of trying to do new content every face-to-face class meeting and having all the students, some in person, some online, trying to participate, they're doing it much more as a flipped blended class where when you're not in the classroom, the physical classroom, you're doing something else online on your own, or perhaps in small groups, but not monitored and controlled and coordinated by the instructor who's trying to deal with those 200 students who are in the room with them. And so they're planning, at least this one class that I've been working very intensively with, they're planning to have essentially a repetition on what they do on Tuesday, again on Thursday, but with a different collection of students. And the students who are coming on Tuesday, they will do some preparation prior to class. And then during that class period, the ones that are coming Thursday will be doing that preparation or perhaps some group work. So there's a number of different ways that you might approach this. One other website, so anyway, you can take a look at this, and then we've got links to student questions and faculty questions. And so we have the faculty frequently asked questions, what is the flex? Will all in-person courses be taught using this? Can students choose? Now that's a question that we really have been had sort of muddled. But if there's a reason that you cannot come, maybe you've become infected, maybe you've been exposed, maybe so you can't come to class. Yes, in that case, the student will not be coming to class, and so they will be doing everything online. Can you do this by not coming to campus? Well, that's also been in flux, and I don't know that we have the definitive decision at this point. I think over the next month, 5 weeks, things may change some. But the idea was that every student should meet face-to-face in a classroom with their instructor at least once a week. That's kind of the general principle that we're trying to approach with. And then there's the student questions, so that some very similar questions, but with slightly different answers for the students. But that's our plan, and I think the technology is mostly in place. I'm responsible for all classrooms, so we've been putting webcams and microphones in those classrooms that didn't have those already. so that we'll have a pretty even, normal classroom that has a display, a recording system for both audio and video. And using Blackboard Collaborate, the classroom can be recorded and presented to synchronous students logging in, and if recorded, to those students who may not have been able to attend, so they can review that. So Emily, back to you.
Yeah, so I think we're out of time, but thanks for listening. If you have any questions, we will be here to answer those, and you can always get in touch with us via email. We're pretty available. So thanks so much. Have a good day.
Great. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Dawn and Emily. I see we have a few questions in the audience, so let's get started. We've got a couple of minutes for those. First, you indicated that you use Connect from McGraw-Hill. So do you use their textbook or do you use your own? And can you please suggest an open resource site for psychology courses?
Oh, excellent question. So we use our own materials. We took one of the OER textbooks, the OpenStax text, and pared it down significantly. So we edited out a lot of content and shortened it because we don't like textbooks to steal what we want to do in class. So we left it at bare bones. And McGraw-Hill worked with us to upload that text into their system. We then actually built out our own adaptive questions within Connect. So we created everything. It was a little bit labor intensive, but McGraw-Hill was great to help. Yeah.
Okay, great. And when adopting a high flex model, how do you motivate students to engage in a way that increases their odds of success? Motivation and engagement are especially difficult in intro psych.
So I
That
would say
is
just from
hard.
a general perspective, we're hopeful that the combined face-to-face meetings as well as the online portions will help to keep the students connected, and we can get, early motivation by meeting with them face-to-face. Now, if that changes, that's going to make things a little more difficult. Maybe Emily has some specific ideas for Psych 101.
I think the best thing, always assign points for things that you want students to engage with. That's my first go-to thing. It's easy. And secondly, I've tried really hard to make sure that my online resources are not just me sitting in my office talking to them on a video. There are so many introductory psychology resources that exist in the world. There are great TED Ed videos, videos that are made with much better quality than I'm capable of making them. So I try to utilize those whenever possible to make sure that the content that I'm posting is engaging when possible.
Okay, and how do you plan group active learning tasks, either in person, social distancing, or online? I find my students hate online group work, especially discussion boards. Any ideas?
Yes, I also hate discussion boards. I am actually currently trying to figure out how I'm going to increase group interaction. I'm going to be using the grouping feature in BBLearn, and I'm probably going to do breakout sessions, which is going to require a lot of work for myself and probably my TAs. But I'm going to try to meet with students in that group format to try to facilitate their discussion in a synchronous online fashion. I do think that students, especially our first year students, would struggle in an asynchronous format to engage in meaningful discussions. So that's why I'm going to try for the synchronous remote group discussion.
Great, well, thank you. Unfortunately, we're out of time for today, but once again, I'd like to thank both Emily and Dawn for joining us today and providing their firsthand experience. Please be sure to explore the event to access more valuable resources from our sponsors and network with peers. Thank you, and I hope everybody enjoys a great day of conference sessions.